You may wonder why states have become willing to dismiss a traffic ticket or to remove points from your driving record when you take this class. Or for that matter, why insurers might take into account when setting premiums. As it turns out, states and insurers have learned through real-world experience that students who finish driver improvement programs like this one are safer drivers, cause fewer crashes, and therefore our residents experience fewer traffic injuries or property damage. How do we know that? Maybe you're not old enough to remember what America roads were like before seatbelt laws took effect in the 1970s and 1980s, when over 50,000 people died on American highways annually. Our population has increased a lot since then. So if this rate had continued, you might expect 75,000 people a year to die in vehicle crashes. Meanwhile, the number of miles the average American drives has also increased, nearly doubled in fact. So that taking into account the growing population and growing miles driven, you might expect something like 150,000 Americans to die in crashes every year. But that isn't what happened. Instead, by 2010, traffic fatalities were down to about 32,000 a year. While that's still too many, saving well over 100,000 lives a year is spectacular. Not to mention a lot fewer injuries, money saved in medical costs, and so on. So how did this happen? The biggest drops in traffic deaths came in the 80s and 90s, after seatbelt laws took effect here in our state and around the nation. But by the 1990s, the gains in traffic safety stalled. Our legislature realized that if we were going to bring injuries and deaths from vehicle crashes down even more, it had to be by changing driver behavior. Let me explain. A University of Indiana study in 1979 determined that 2 to 3% of vehicle crashes happen due to mechanical problems. Another 4 to 5% are due to road conditions. And the remaining 93% happen because of a driver's actions or inactions. What that means is a large number of those crashes could have been avoided or made less severe if the driver had simply known what to do. With that in mind, our state joined a growing number of states, beginning in the 1990s, that began to offer driver improvement class options for either having a ticket dismissed or the points removed from your record. And as it turned out, it worked. By about 2014, the rate of highway deaths had been cut nearly in half from the mid-90s. Part of it was due to technological advances. Overall, vehicles are safer than they were 25 years ago. But the biggest part of the decline in highway traffic rate deaths is to do with how people were driving. And how do we know that? Well, for one thing, the rate started to rise again after 2012. Why, after all those years of steady gains, would the roads start becoming less safe? It was pretty clearly because of new driver behavior. Cell phone use while driving. Our numbers of crashes that have been decreasing steadily started to rise again. By the way, you may have noticed that I use the term vehicle crashes and not car accidents. An accident suggests that it's no one's fault. But we know better, don't we? Remember that 1979 University of Indiana study that showed 93% of crashes resulting from driver behavior. In fact, a recent National Highway Traffic Safety Administration study not only confirmed this, but actually found a slightly higher percentage of crashes due to human error. And we saw it confirmed as well when the driver behavior, using a cell phone, made the rate of crashes start to rise again. So let's be honest, they're not car accidents, they're crashes. What I want to do in this class is to give you the tools to avoid crashes if you can, and to make any crashes that do happen less serious.